content as we speak, so you should be able to see that momentarily. If for any reason you're joined merely via audio, we're happy to share this deck at the conclusion of the meeting. So be sure to reach out to our presenters. And if you are only joined via audio, I would highly encourage you to download the Skype client and actually join the full presentation, because you won't be able to experience as much unless you join the full presentation. If you have any questions about that, please just let our team know. But you should be able to see that content coming up momentarily. So while I'm waiting for that to finish uploading, wanted to start by giving you an overview of the individuals on the call who will be talking today. Christine may have mentioned, my name is Reed Weedor. I'm the Chief Technology Officer here at New Signature. I am going to be joined by Jesse Sun, who has been working with employee self-service probably longer than any of us. Here at New Signature, we are using employee self-service, and we have conversations with customers every day about what employee self-service is and how they can use it to drive their business forward in a more aggressive fashion than they're doing today. So I also have with us today Mark Merchant, who has also been working with employee self-service for an incredibly long time and has a deep and rich technical understanding of the product and the capabilities. So at any point during this presentation, if you have questions, please feel free to mention those questions to our folks who are answering that, and either Mark or myself or Jesse will try and get you an answer as close to real time as possible. We don't have that many slides to go through, so I want to make sure that as questions do appear, that you feel empowered to ask them throughout the presentation. So with that, unless we have any questions to begin with, let's get the ball rolling. So I wanted to start by talking about why employee self-service from a knowledge perspective is so critical. Because I think a lot of us don't know, I would say anecdotally feel like it's a good thing for employees to be well informed, but don't really know or have the data at our fingertips to suggest why that's so important. So what's the actual the numbers? And these numbers are from both Gartner and IDC and TSIA. But when you think about it, in just 2 years, the ability to quickly create and retrieve that information is going to be something that distinguishes leading enterprises from those that are falling behind. What does that mean in terms of very simple, knowledge capabilities? Most of the time, 44% of the time, employees at many organizations just can't get an answer to the questions that they have. And we see this through a lot of the organizational structures that have arisen over the past 5 to 10 years. A lot of that org redesign kind of momentum has all been about solving this problem. How do you get someone the answers quickly? Is that having a manager able to do that? Is that having people rather than siloed have access to all of the information? When it comes to access right now, 61% of employees are accessing more than 4 systems to get information on a regular basis. And that obviously slows things down. There's not one version of the truth, and because there are so many different systems, that can cause heartache and headache. And ultimately, when you think about what needs to change in order for you to be more productive, most employees say if we just had an effective knowledge management system, and this is the employees themselves saying, hey, I could be 20 to 30% more efficient. Flip that around, and what you hear is, right now, I'm inefficient by 20% to 30%. I'm spending 25% of my day, for instance, just finding information rather than actually using that information to do my job. And that's a huge amount. Out of an 8-hour day, that's 1 to 2 hours just spent finding information that's already there in your environment. They're not having to generate new knowledge. They're just having to find it. So that's a big problem at most organizations. So what is the offering that Microsoft is going to bring to the table with employee self-service? And it's something that I think is unique in the space. The whole mission of employee self-service is to make sure that knowledge isn't restricted to a few individuals. It's that it's accessible to everyone across the entire organization. And that's a big difference from some of the other platforms that are out there. We want to make sure that individuals can always see the information that they have access to. And that's regardless of where the information ultimately lies. When you think about the types of employee questions that come up at most organizations, there are HR questions, there are IT questions, legal questions. Regardless of that type of inquiry, employee self-service from Microsoft is going to be able to answer that particular question. So it's a key goal to make sure that it's not just limited to, for instance, IT, because IT is a great source of questions and answers, but when you have an HR question, that can be even more timely, or a legal question may involve a lot of risk. And ultimately, surfacing that information from a knowledge perspective needs to be pushed to everywhere. It needs to be in a single web portal, but that's just the start. It needs to be available on a mobile device, in your traditional office applications like Word and Outlook, and your line of business enterprise applications. All of those are areas that you need to be able to surface the knowledge that you generated. So that means you're going to start with a consistent knowledge platform. You can't put the cart before the horse. You can't have this knowledge surfaced in a mobile form factor if you've never actually gone in and built the knowledge platform itself. But then on top of those platforms are where it's actually going to be surfaced to various individuals. So that means every employee has access, whether it's mobile, those self-service portals that we mentioned, the ability to have that in Outlook or Word. When I talk to customers, they often don't understand exactly how knowledge would appear within the Office stack. And the answer is quite simple. If I'm using Outlook and someone asks me a question, I want to have that knowledge instantly available for me within Outlook to respond to a person and say, oh, here's the official answer that I'm giving back to you. If I'm in Word, if I'm preparing a statement of work, for instance, and I need to get some legal T&Cs added to the document, I don't need to email someone or IM them. I want to be able to have the authoritative source of knowledge appear right within my Word application so that I can take advantage of that. And finally, of course, those third-party applications. The line of business apps that you may have developed over the past 10 or 15 years, one of the large goals of those is to be able to hook into the employee self-service platform so that knowledge can be imported into them as well. It's not just limited to the website or the traditional Microsoft applications, as it were. So what does that actually look like in terms of brass tacks? We're going to start by describing what the portal looks like, because it's an easy way for everyone to wrap their heads around what that employee self-service model is. So when you think about self-service, this is targeting your internal employees. Now, obviously, having a robust knowledge base may be something that many customers and partners decide to surface to external customers. But in this current model that we're talking about, it's all your internal staff. So many of you likely have an intranet located inside your environment that may contain some smattering of information. It may be 20% of the information. A lot of you may have HR systems that contain another 20% that frequently are external. This one self-service portal is designed to encompass all of those potential questions. It can be built on any device. So if I have a mobile device, I can just go to the same page. It's automatically responsive. I don't have to hire a team of developers to make the portal responsive. It's responsive by default. I have the ability to skin and customize that portal so that it looks like my primary website and my primary internal properties. So I don't have to have it look entirely different or feel like a completely different experience from the intranet that I've already got. And it's updated in real time. So as documents and articles are being curated on the back end, as things move from draft to published, as it were, they will instantly appear on the website. As more people start to respond to various questions on that will be surfaced higher to give you a better answer. So when you think about the types of things that happen at most organizations, a lot of questions are around new programs or new initiatives that haven't existed for 5 or 10 years. It's the new company meeting, the annual meeting that's coming up. It's the new conference that you're going to. It's the new legal documents that are available. Frequently when these things come out, because people don't have a history of 1 or 2 years experience with them, that's when they're going to have the most number of questions to be able to answer it. And that's when you want to have that information available in real time on the portal page. So let's look at one of the examples of that. So Metro Bank had an existing knowledge base that had been, I would say, lightly used to be able to let people know how to do common tasks at the organization. With employee self-service, they were able to come in and better engage the actual employees to ultimately support questions that customers were bringing to them. So when you think about employee self-service, those questions don't necessarily have to even be questions that aren't of use to external stakeholders, but they may be questions that external stakeholders ask internal folk all the time. So even though this is an internal facing discussion that we're having, at Metro Bank, for instance, if I don't understand how to transfer cash around the organization, that's an external stakeholder question, but I don't necessarily want to publish that on an external facing website, because that may contain some internal information about the different departments, the average time, the SLAs associated that ultimately I don't necessarily have to share with a customer. They may be things that I need to know to be able to do my job more efficiently. So at Metro Bank, every single employee has the ability now inside their organization to be able to spin up and start getting those questions answered. And that process was not a difficult process. When you think about another challenge with this model, a lot of organizations go through a very lengthy curation process in which they have to decide which articles are appropriate, which ones are not. If they're trying to import a large amount of previous legacy data, you can have bad data in the system. By having such an easy to spin up solution, you're able to get people adopting it quickly. And the best part of that is, the most popular topics is a great example. In most legacy knowledge-based systems, it's merely curation by what people think of as important, rather than what's popular or recent or of most use to individual end users. In the employee self-service model from Microsoft, as things gain popularity, it has the ability to surface to more stakeholders. So if there is something that is trending, you're going to be able to see that without having to come back and highlight it or spotlight it in any way. It'll just naturally float to the top of your organization. What does that look like from a knowledge base connecting into the Outlook environment and the Word environment? And I want to spend a few minutes on this because, as I said in the beginning, this is probably the biggest new functionality that most organizations aren't adopting today. So let's talk about Outlook, because many of us use Outlook every day. So the number one, I would say, response time issue that we see with Outlook is the ability to go from Outlook to a number of different systems to get the information that you need to go back to stakeholders. This is obviously true of IT and internal help desks, but it's really true of every organization in the every division within your organization. If I'm on the internal legal group and I'm trying to mitigate risk, I'm definitely concerned about providing the right answer to someone. I certainly don't want to give them advice that's incorrect. So I need something that is a system of record. At the same time, I don't want to have to log into 2 or 3 different systems and cobble together an answer. I want to be able to have that at my fingertips. So the way that the Outlook integration works, and it works in both the traditional Outlook client as well as Outlook web app, so whether you're on the go or sitting in your office, it will search through the text that is contained within the request, and based on that text, make a recommendation for the type of knowledge that you're looking for. So it's incredibly easy for an end user to use. All I have to do is select the ability to pull in employee self-service. It will scan the text. It will then suggest, here are the 5 or 10 articles that you might want to be able to suggest back to the person. And it's a single button click, in fact, to add that official text into your response going back to the original requester. So when you think about the types of questions that come up on a regular basis, we all know it would be great if employees could go to a web page, and be able to get those answered more quickly. That's going to be the cheapest cost because you don't even have a human at one end doing that. But this is the next level above that. If you think of all of the phone calls that come in or the Skype conversations that happen between various stakeholders in your organization and the people inside your organization that don't know those answers, that's a lot of time. Your IT team can probably quantify that based on the number of cases. But most of the places that we talk to, whether it's HR or legal, have very rarely been as robust at recording every single request that comes into the system. Think of your HR team. Every time a person asks, hey, how do I contribute to my 401k? Or how do I add a dependent upon this particular plan? Those questions are questions that honestly are repeatable. They happen over and over and over again. And likely, your HR team may have tried to implement some form of knowledge management system, either in a third-party HRIS system or something that's homegrown. The disadvantage there is, most staff don't go into those systems on a regular basis. So if I once a year click into an HRIS system to update or check my pay level, that's not going to be something that's going to allow me easily to get the answers at my fingertips. And so what ends up happening? I end up sending an email to HR. And this method allows the HR team to very quickly say, oh, Reed was asking about adding a dependent upon his plan. Here are all the articles that are applied to him. I'm going to click a single button and add this in my response and get on with my day. Because the HR team may not have been quantifying how many times those questions come in, it can seem like a very light lift to those of us that don't do it. But if you chat with anyone in HR or legal or accounting, they get hundreds of these questions a day at most organizations. And most of the time, they're duplicative questions. If two people are in completely different divisions, they have no idea that the knowledge was shared. So this contextual knowledge solution allows that team to be very rapid with the response back to that ultimate stakeholder. And the best part is, and I'll use legal as an example, the questions that come up, the answers are fully curated. So the legal team that's responsible for preparing the answers doesn't have to be living in Outlook to do that. They can go through the web interface and go through and move different articles from draft to published based on their own desire to maintain 100% fidelity and control over all the documents that impact the legal side of the business. So you don't get the problem that we see in a lot of organizations where they've built some sort of homegrown wiki and ultimately anyone in the organization can come in and suggest answers. These answers are fully curated, and if the team that needs to approve them doesn't sign off on them, they're not going to be able for other people to get that knowledge out of it. So that's the Outlook scenario. It's a pretty simple, I get an email, it scans through. When I respond to someone, I can embed it back in the email. What about Microsoft Word? And that's where we feel that there's a huge gap today. We see lots of organizations that struggle mightily with the ability to get knowledge from disparate systems into things like RFPs or statements of work. And the big challenge there is that Word is a very powerful platform. And so because of that, we frequently see organizations that go through and on a regular basis rebuild new templates, or chunk documents into multiple sections, primarily so that each different area can be controlled by a different department. Maybe legal has to review the final context because they're very concerned that inappropriate language might get inserted into it. Maybe your technical team or your sales team wants to have templated items that can go into every single statement of work or RFP response that goes out. And right now, they may not have a good way of doing that. They may have different documents. They may be cutting and pasting multiple documents together. With knowledge in Office, the answer is quite simple. You can look through, again, all of the articles related to a particular query, and then you can just add in the text into the standard response that's approved and again, curated by the team responsible. So let's imagine that you have an RFP response, and today that goes through several stages of review. You might have the technical folk do a quick pass at it. You might have the legal team do a pass later. The nice thing with this is that you can build up that knowledge in individual silos and then surface that to the person who's ultimately constructing the entire RFP response document. The best part of that is as things change, technology is a great example of that. Prior to new products being announced, your technical team may not have a good way of saying, hey, stop using that old language, now start using this new language. In the new model, they can easily publish articles that are for specific technology platforms. And then when the platform is updated, they can say, hey, this no longer applies to this legacy work that's out there. Or they can say these older documents only apply to the older products that are out there, and newer ones apply to the newer documents. So you can make it very easy as new products are released by your own team or the marketplace to update those technical bits to ensure that that's true across the board. Same thing in HR, same thing in legal. You know, the what's true with HR today will be different tomorrow. You know, if you think about in the U.S. contributions to 401ks, for instance, every year that limit changes. And so simply having an authoritative source is not good enough to say that you're going to be able to push that to everyone. The ideal goal is to tie that to a specific time and to eventually move things. If something was published but is no longer active, you can use the power of curation to move it out of the suggested knowledge for you. Finally, it bears repeating that switching between Outlook and 4 different systems is going to be slower. Switching between Word and 4 different systems is going to be slower. So the ability to have that knowledge surfaced in one single area and added within the pane itself, again, whether you're using the web browser or the actual application, is a huge advantage to making sure that you can be as rapid as possible in your response without letting go of the truest form of information. Now, ultimately, that knowledge that you surface can certainly, it's not limited to you having to build everything from scratch. The article that you suggest could certainly say, hey, there are more details in this other system if someone needs to go deeper, or you need to reference these 2 PowerPoint decks that are in this other SharePoint site. So it's not forcing you, necessarily to dump every single bit of content and knowledge into one system. It can link to others as necessary, but to be able to get your answer answered quickly, it helps to have as much information as possible in the system that you need to be able to use to respond to individuals over Outlook or to respond to RFPs or statements of work within Word. Any questions about this level of capability? I know most of the organizations that I chat to right now, this is entirely aspirational because they have no solution today that embeds within Outlook or Word. Okay. So I'm going to show off what that solution actually looks like. We're going to be playing a little video here so that you can see exactly what the end user response is. So without further ado, let's show off. Within this particular section, you can certainly highlight the Knowledge in Outlook feature and actually look at the type of information that's contained within it to be able to respond to this particular query. It's the same as any other app like Action Items or Who's Who or what have you. So for one of these questions that come in, I can respond to this message. When I'm responding, I can go in and actually bring up the knowledge information contained within it. It'll look through and suggest a couple of items based on the text that's contained within it, and I can simply paste that into the message. So there's not anything in addition I need to do to get all of the information that's there. I can obviously customize it, and once I customize it, I can send it off to the person who had the original question. So with a few simple button clicks, I have the ability to come in there and rapidly get a response to anyone who needs it. Based on the information that was already curated from my knowledge website. Couldn't be simpler. I remember showing this to a customer who said, well, that seems pretty easy. And the answer was, yes, there's not that much to it. Obviously, you need to start by having your knowledge within the platform. It does you no good to roll this out to your organization if you haven't gone through the heavier lift of getting knowledge into the system. But once it's there, being able to leverage it with Outlook is a simple, easy task that every member of your organization can perform. So let's look at what that looks like within Microsoft Word, because it's a little bit different on the Word side of the coin. So I'm going to go ahead and kick this off. So within Word, I've got a sample RFP that I'm going to be responding to. This is a basic example, but I think it covers the model quite well. So we've got a series of questions that need to be responded to within the Word environment. So I'm going to go through, and typically what I would do is call up different stakeholders in my organization, a technical person, a legal person. In this model, I'll go in and select my apps and bring in the knowledge from employee self-service directly within the Word pane. So this isn't another application. It's directly within Word itself. If you've used the share feature within Word 2016, this will look quite similar. So within the knowledge pane, I have the ability to search on knowledge that I'm going to ask for within the information. So in this case, I'm going to highlight a couple of different areas and then pull, based on that highlight, the information within our knowledge system based on those keywords. I can see that there are a couple of different relevant articles that I want to be able to paste into this specific section. Now, you ultimately have total control over the types of keywords and the suggestions that it's making for this item. So it's not something that it's random in any sense. You can come in there and very tightly control, based on the keywords you're selecting, the type of information that gets pasted in. So in this case, I've gone through and pasted some information from the sales team. That's great. I have the ability now to go into the other areas, select different keywords for highlighting, and then pull up different information based on that. So previously, even that first task would have probably taken a couple of revisions. It would have taken me asking the individual that I got the information from, well, what's the latest version of the feature set? I know that I have something from 2 months ago or 3 months ago, but has anything changed in the past month? And this way, I never need to ask that question. Everything in the knowledge base is always up to date because the individuals who are curating it are on the teams that are responsible for providing that content. So it transfers ownership from a number of different discrete individuals to the team that ultimately is going to be driving the ball forward in that sense. And that's true whether these are technical features that we're talking about, or sales items that we're talking about, or legal items that we're talking about. Each team can individually go in there and own the set of articles that they need to be able to answer questions from.
Hey, Reed, this is Jesse.
Hey, Jesse, how's it going?
Good. I just wanted to add a couple of points of feedback. The sales leaders really love this capability because, one, it's really driving productivity back into their sellers. So they're stopping from going into 3 or 4 older RFPs and having the copy and paste. They can actually go into the cloud, pull down relevant content from this knowledge base, and respond back to these RFPs. And the folks on the marketing side and even product marketing, they really like this because they can actually contribute to the knowledge base from any of their standard Office 365 products like email, Outlook, or Word, and make sure that all the sellers are armed with the most up-to-date as well as the current messaging, right, around any of the products or services that they're selling. And this is, again, just one example and use case, but we see patterns around how knowledge can be available for any employee across HR, IT, finance, legal functions within an organization. So I just wanted to share that with the team.
Yeah, that's definitely good to know. Are there any questions about this capability within the Word or Outlook stack? Because I know, as I mentioned earlier, we have not seen a lot of organizations taking advantage of this already, which is a shame, because once you see this functionality, the first thing you think of, if you work on RFPs a lot, or your frontline, either help desk or HR or legal, is, wow, this would save me hours every single day. So would love to get this in your hands so that you guys can see what this looks like. So let's move ahead. I think it's important to recognize that both the portal and the Office applications are just some of the capabilities of employee self-service. So, when you think about how all of this stuff works, it begins by making sure that you've got the knowledge within ESS. But once it's there, then it can light up a bunch of different scenarios that aren't even ones that you may have thought of beforehand. So a good example of that is if you're using SharePoint today or SharePoint Online, Right now, you may have information scattered across a bunch of different SharePoint sites. With employee self-service, you can go to one portal and have this be the true source of information. Now, ultimately, that portal will contain knowledge articles, and those knowledge articles actually could surface to videos. And those videos might be stored within Office 365 Video or within a dedicated SharePoint site. So before, you might have had to tell a customer, hey, or an employee, hey, the answer to your question is obviously in the video site. Just go troll the video site. That may not be curated in any standardized fashion. It may not be searchable in an easy way. We have lots of customers who are using Office 365 Video because of its capabilities, but the way those videos are governed and the ability to say, hey, watch this video first, and then this video second, and then this video third, is really meta commentary that you need to have some article that walks individuals through. Here are the things that you need to do. And using SharePoint and employee self-service together can make that possible in a way that using it simply alone would not work. What does that look like? Well, I think I have an example here of being able to publish knowledge directly from within the SharePoint side. Jesse, I don't know if you want to narrate this one as we go through it. Let me get this going.
Yeah.
Okay. So here is the, Jesse.
Hey, Reed.
Yeah.
Yep, here I am. Sorry about that. So here on the front end of this site, it's a Contoso portal that's designed to interface with your employees rather than build out a homegrown SharePoint site. And then the back end of this system is obviously SharePoint, where you maintain all of your content management and collaboration. So in this example, what we're going to see is we're going to see a PDF here hosted inside SharePoint that becomes available for you to publish to the Dynamics portal in one click. So here we have this setting where we open up the drop-down menu and we select Publish. The next view that you're going to see is an available space to update any of the metadata if you choose to retitle it, or maybe add a short description. And then by saving it, it becomes available on the Downloads library on that front-end Contoso site. And as a result, you don't have to change anything about how you manage all of your content on the back end through the SharePoint system. And then now on the front end, we're able to find that PDF and open up that file directly on the portal side. The next example is going to be listing a knowledge base article that you create inside SharePoint. So this should seem and look somewhat familiar for you guys that use it. And then as we go in and create this article itself here, and we do manage this through the WYSIWYG editor, so you can update the look and feel or add any rich media files like videos or images as well. And it's very similar to what we saw earlier, right? So once we save the article, on the back end, right here, we can actually check the status of this article as being published to the front end of that Dynamics portal. And now we will find it as an article. So if we type in a quick search based on keywords and phrases, you'll see how it populates and makes it available immediately here in real time. How do I change my username? And we're able to find that article here as an employee on the self-service portal. Knowledge-based content can also be rated. Feedback can be collected. And in that way, the folks that manage this site and the content along with it have a chance to improve it over time. But a lot of the reporting and a lot of the insights that you're able to get around this is truly a big reason for why users are adopting this Dynamics portal. They're able to go in and run reports based on failed search terms so that they can see exactly what types of searches employees are making that yield 0 results, and then go back and create those types of articles to drive more value, right, into the employee base. So just one example of some of the reporting capabilities, but we do track and look at all the popularity of articles, feedback as well, and that way we're able to consistently create and update better articles or revise them over time. Back to you, Reed.
Yeah. So when you're thinking about the benefits to your organization all up, there's obviously a lot of different scenarios that this lights up, and so often when we're having conversations with customers, the number one question is where do I begin? What's the first step? And what we like to tell customers that they need to do is go for the low-hanging fruit. It's not rocket science here. There are questions that get asked on a regular basis within your organization, every single day. Chances are if you chat with your IT team, if you chat with your HR team, with your accounting team or finance team or legal, if you just ask them, hey, what are the top 5 questions that you have to answer over and over again? All of those different areas are going to be ones that are going to crop up. Some of the areas that don't come to mind until we actually do engagements with customers is, what about sales? What are the common questions sales have? Marketing, what are the questions that come up over and over again with marketing? It's not just hey, how do I work remotely from home? It's, hey, I need access to the latest marketing deck on our products and services. Where do those live? Or how can I be sure that I'm going to get the latest images for use that are approved by my marketing team? So every single division at your organization likely has these questions. And the easiest way to get up to speed with this is to ensure that you start making a list of those questions, targeting the ones that are more popular, getting them into the system. And once you do so, then you can start to see these benefits. Obviously, employee productivity goes up when they all have access to those questions. And that can start with a simple survey. Typically, we walk into customers and sit down with various business decision makers on different lines of the business and say, hey, for accounting, here are the top 5 we know of. What are the ones in your organization? For finance, for HR, and so forth. Here are some ones that we've seen before, but what's special and unique about your organization? Beyond employee productivity, though, that ultimately has the power to drive customer satisfaction. And this is where we see a lot of organizations that have already invested in externally facing websites to convey this information go back to the problem that most organizations don't tell their employees to go to the external website to answer a question. It's just a difference of focus. If I'm working at a bank or a retail organization or even a manufacturer, I'm not going to go to my own website to determine information about the product. I want the unvarnished, unspun truth. And to do that, I need to have access to relevant information about our products or our services that haven't been solely tailored for an external audience. So the best benefit of that is when a customer calls, rather than giving them the information that they could have achieved themselves by going to the website, your internal employees have the ability to talk to them as peers, as trusted advisors for saying, hey, this is why you want to go with this one product versus another product. Or these are the differences between the services that we're selling and why you would choose them. So being able to do that ultimately is going to drive up customer satisfaction. And we see that a lot of organizations that have already deployed this, Metro Bank and others, by merely having their employees on top of the knowledge. Nothing is worse, and we all know it from personal experience, than when you call into a particular organization on a helpline and they're unable to get access to the information. They say, well, our system is down, or, oh, I'll have to escalate this, or I don't have access to that type of information. That's a horrible customer experience. And having every single employee at your organization empowered to find this information at their fingertips is going to drive up that customer satisfaction ratio. That, in turn, of course, is going to reduce cost. When you think about the different support channels that are available for individuals, having the ability to self-service items via the web is the most inexpensive service mechanism. Having an individual respond via an email that contains curated, relevant, timely information, that's incredibly inexpensive as well. Both of those reduce the need to have individuals hopping onto phone calls, or worse yet, have in-person meetings that ultimately are the most expensive service costs. And the great thing about that is employees are no different than any of us. If we can solve the problem ourselves via a web page or via a quick email, that drives up our satisfaction. So it's not only cheaper, it's better for your experience to be able to get that information more quickly on your own, rather than having to set up a meeting at someone's availability time or have an in-person conversation. Now, what else does this drive? Ultimately, for organizations that have a wide array of products and services, those are the ones where we see these problems occur over and over again. If you've only got one product or one service that you're selling, man, it's easy to have your information straight, to have no difference between sales and marketing and delivery. If you're like most of us and you have a whole plethora of different products and services, though, when new products are announced, when new services are released, when old services are sunsetted, those are the moments that you really need to have that information able for everyone to know without having to have multiple trainings happening on a regular cadence. So it can drive up satisfaction there, and it can help you sell those new products and services merely by making those changes on the back end. And that goes to the last point that I wanted to mention, which is corporate compliance. We see a lot of organizations where they have very strict policies that are being generated by members of the legal team or HR, and yet those policies aren't implemented across the business in any way. So, when a policy changes, let's say that you used to be able to share some personal information and now you're prohibited from sending any personal information. If you don't have the technical controls in place to be able to prevent that, you're relying upon people's ability to know it. And if you're relying upon people's ability to know it, you need to ensure that that's in every type of authoritative system that you own. And that's where employee self-service comes up. If I have a question about this, I want to be able to get the up-to-date answer. I don't want to get an answer from 2014, for instance. I want to get the latest up-to-date answer on my risks. And so that's where a corporate compliance policy is really going to be tied into this to ensure that I never have to think, am I creating a risk by sending out a statement of work without the latest legal terms and conditions on it, or I'm using an older template that's not the one that I need to do it with. As long as I'm using employee self-service, I can be confident I'm meeting the compliance needs of all the organization. So we had a couple of examples here at the end to give you kind of broad brushstroke ideas for what that actually looks like. In TELUS Wireless, one of the customers using employee self-service, they were able to achieve a return on their investment in less than 3 months of launch. So when you think about this, it's actually a fun exercise to do once you start working through the deployment. You know how much a phone call costs you every single time one is made. At Telos, they were spending $160,000 a month when people were calling them about frequently asked questions. That was around 40,000 calls a month. So being able to lower that number of calls had a significant impact on their bottom line. Being able to do that meant that they were able to rapidly, within a couple months, justify the cost of the project because it paid for itself, which is a huge benefit in organizations that have a large number of calls that are happening. The ancillary benefit is also that because people were also using the knowledge base internally to answer questions, they were able to get up to speed with less training and less time spent training by 30%. So it's not just to force individuals into going into this portal to answer their own questions. It's also being able to say, hey, the fact that there are authoritative answers in this system means I'm going to get up to speed much more quickly than I would otherwise before. It might have taken me 2 months to get up to speed. Now it might be a month to get up to speed, since I know there's this curated section of all the authoritative answers I could use. Ask.com, another great example where the total response time went from 8 hours to 1.5 hours. And when you think about the drivers of customer satisfaction, the ability to get your question answered quickly and have it correctly answered are the number one and number two reasons that customers have good or poor experiences. It's not enough to have a fast response if you don't have the right answer. Simply saying, hey, we're gonna pick up the phone as soon as you call us, and then we're gonna say, hey, we're looking into it. That doesn't solve people's problems. It makes them feel good for a second, but ultimately they want to get that answer, the authoritative answer, more quickly. So being able to get that authoritative answer, also key, but if it takes you a week to get that again drives down customer satisfaction. So I think most consumers, and certainly many professionals at organizations today, just assume that organizations have this authoritative knowledge base. The fact that they don't is often a surprise. So they think that everyone should have this at their fingertips today. The fact that they don't is a huge change. So when you think about this, 72% of the people who interacted with them wrote just to say thanks via self-service. That's a huge way of driving up customer satisfaction. It's really changing people's experience. If I'm used to spending an hour or two on the phone with a help desk, and suddenly that takes 5 minutes. Even though that may not have been a bigger lift for the organization, I suddenly have become a brand evangelist for your organization. And finally, when you think about people who are on the road and using different devices, because all of these web portals are surfaceable on mobile devices, whether it's iOS, Android, or Windows Phone, that ultimately drives up satisfaction as well. I don't have to pay a team of developers to be tweaking and updating the site as changes are made. Regardless of the volume of topics that come up or the shape of those topics, it's going to render in a mobile form factor, which means I don't get people calling me saying, hey, I can't see the answer to this question because you just added 20 or 30 new articles to it. And ultimately, when I'm using that mobile experience, I'm still contributing information back to the employee self-service portal. So if I like an answer, if I rate the answer to a question, that's going to go back into the system, which will surface the answer up to more individuals without me having to, again, pay developers to add that custom code or content. So I think that's it for our prepared discussion. Wanted to ask the individuals if you guys had any questions. I have a short video that kind of goes over that vision of what it looks like that we can also show you if we don't have too many questions and we have enough time. Christine, Victoria, do we have any questions that came in?
I am not seeing any in the chat window, no.
Any other questions from people who have joined?
Reed, I'm wondering, are there first steps that you would advise organizations to take if they're thinking about employee self-service?
Yes, certainly. I would say, I can put on my new signature hat. We do lots of these conversations every month with customers. And the first step is really engaging a Microsoft partner, such as New Signature or any other partner who has experience with employee self-service and working with them to identify, the basics that you want to go through. I mentioned this earlier, but it's really about generating the content that's going to be used not only in the web portal, but also the mobile experience and the Office applications. Once you've gotten that ball rolling, and that can be a relatively quick engagement at most of the organizations I talk to, because typically what you're going to want to do is to build that information from scratch. You're not going to want to try and do a large amount of data import unless you have a previous knowledge management system that has very up-to-date curated information. Most of the organizations I chat with are better served by building that content on the fly. But we typically sit down with customers and walk them through with the various business lines of business heads. That could be the head of accounting, the head of IT, the head of HR. And for each of those groups, we'll typically offer you a set number of questions that we would use out of the box. But then we work with you to not only identify new questions that are specific to your organization, but also new answers. Ultimately, we can provide you questions, but every organization is different about what those specific answers are on things from how do you work remotely to I need a new machine to how do I contribute more to this particular 401k plan. Each of those is going to be different for every organization. But once you have about 5 to 10 questions in each area, you really have a core area that can then be surfaced to the entire organization and to build from there. So we work with you to not only identify the questions, but also to identify the process by which future questions and answered will be generated, because this really is a living system. It's not something that you want to stand up and then not touch. It's something that after you stand up every single day, different questions are going to come in, and you're going to want to have people responding to those in an efficient manner as possible and directing them to the right answers rather than simply being passive about it. You might review that once a week. It might be something your knowledge team reviews once a month. But regardless of that cadence, you're going to want to be doing that review process about expanding the knowledge that's contained within the system. And so that's typically the second step that we work with organizations to do, is identifying, what that actual business process flow is. Following that, we work with you on the technical bits to make sure that you can get that knowledge surfaced in Outlook, in Word, in the web portal itself. And that typically also involves some amount of customization of the portal. As I mentioned earlier, it can be skinned to look just like your internal intranet or even your external website. So there's a little bit of time required to actually do that styling of the web portal to make sure that it does that. But once you've gone through those 3 steps, you've built the knowledge, you've established the business processes to making sure that future knowledge can be acquired and published, and you've customized the portal and the Office apps to make sure that it works. From there, it's typically a custom engagement. If you have specific line of business apps, if you have SharePoint sites that need custom integration, that we would work with you to identify. Those first 3 steps, though, are pretty cookie cutter. So they should be something that you should work with New Signature or another Dynamics employee self-service partner on and have a very good experience through that process. If we don't have any other questions, I think we should close with the vision so that you guys can just see what this looks like in a real-life scenario, and then we can let you have a few more minutes back of your day. I'm going to go ahead and kick this off and appreciate everyone's time today. If you have questions following the presentation, don't hesitate to reach out to us. And as I said, we'll be happy to provide you a summarized deck as well if you weren't able to see all of it. It looks like the audio is not working on my video. I apologize, but I will be happy to share this link with you so that you guys can see this presentation offline. So, Christine and Victoria, could we get this link to the folks who attended so that they
Yep, absolutely. We'll include it in the wrap-up email.
Okay. Well, thanks again for everyone spending the time today, and look forward to many future conversations around employee self-service.
Thanks, everyone. We are ending the recording.